Lance Mechanics here today, and I want to talk about how just about every apprentice is getting screwed over in the automotive industry. And I say just about every one of them because, let's be honest, when an apprentice gets hired, they got the rose-tinted goggles on for quite a long time. They're young, they're dumb, they're easily manipulated, and they don't really know what's happening to them until it's too late. So let's talk about that. All right. This video could end up really long or really short. I usually talk until my throat hurts, but this is a touchy subject for a lot of people. And you'd think with the mechanic industry shortage, they'd be fighting this, but it's never going to happen. It's self-inflicted. I do not feel bad for the automotive industry. They made their bed. They can lie in it. So let's talk about it. Maybe let's talk about Ontario first. This can apply to everywhere else. So average trade school for an automotive is 2 years. That's 2 years of your life. But what happens in Ontario is that gives you 4,000 hours, and you need 6,000 hours to write your test. So in theory, if they did 2 years of trade school, these apprentices could potentially write 1 year afterwards. But it doesn't work like that. Hell no, it doesn't work like that. Employers are a bit of dicks when it comes to apprentices in the automotive industry. So it ends up being more like 2 to 3 years. And that's only if they're not on the lube rack. So there's this weird stigma with owners and dealerships that they want to test the apprentice in question, put him through the ringer and see if he can handle it. Okay, drive him out of the industry so he doesn't come back, and then he badmouths it to 10 other people. Very smart. Absolutely. Hands up. Keep doing that. It's working for the industry right now. So the licensed apprentices or licensed mechanics, you're not helping either. So you get this apprentice in, you promise him the world, and you put him on tires and oil changes till the kid has a nervous breakdown, which is going to happen. You put them physically through the ringer because a lot of places will have tire storage on the second story. I've dealt with that. Or they have them in storage containers on the back lot and it's like a 30-minute walk. Or, anyways, it's just not convenient. So these kids are burning out physically. You've promised them the world. So you put them on oil changes and tires all day and you keep them there. You keep them there from 9 to 14 months to 2 years. And then those hours will count towards their apprenticeship here in Ontario, but you refuse to sign their hours off. You're holding it over their head like you're basically a slave at that point, or a slave master at that point. You're holding it over their head, holding their freedom. I know it's going to sound really bad, but that's exactly what employers in Ontario do. Canadian Tire is the worst. I just got a story on that one. So they're holding them hostage, basically, and I'm not sure what recourse they have, but it's not good. So now I know the College of Trades here is very friendly. They'll say, hey, get a record of employment from your employer, even though you weren't registered, and we'll backtrack it. The problem is they have to provide that record of employment or the hours to prove it, and a lot of the time they won't. It's real unfair here, at least in Ontario. I imagine US can be really bad. Like, I understand they're not certified there. They have ASE. Automotive licenses here are pretty in-depth. They're a pain in the ass to get, so something to think about. So now, you have these apprentices in the dealership or a private garage, and the owner thinks they have to prove that they're worth their time. Well, buddy, they got out of bed this morning. I think that's enough for automotive. So they put them through this trial process, and they burn the kid out to the point of breakdown, and if the kid gets talky or gets annoyed or starts asking questions, hey, when am I going to get my apprenticeship? Or hey, when are you going to put me on other stuff? A lot of time the employer just kind of brushes them off or gets annoyed and replaces them. Like, what do you do? And then the employer will go on the news and be like, oh, we can't find mechanics. There's a shortage. You created the shortage. Like, again, anybody watching this video, you should have zero sympathy for the automotive industry. They've literally done it themselves. They slit their own throats on the labor shortage because, mind you, if you can be a decent mechanic, you can make money. But here's the thing. I tell every young guy, why would you spend 4 years in automotive when you can spend 4 years in heavy equipment and you'll make 6 figures after those 4 years? You can't do that in automotive. That's more like a 6 to 10 years when you get skilled enough to beat the flat rate system because you're not making those numbers in a private garage. I can tell you some shops around my area are offering hourly guys $50 an hour, but you know what? If the dealerships offer flat rate $50 an hour, they're going to be making more. Again, competition. Even you think with all these price hikes labor increases, there'd be a lot of competition, people breaking down the doors. No, not happening. Because the automotive industry burned themselves. They beat the crap out of these apprentices. And they still are. And I see it in the comments. Like, it's horrible. Like, oh, I should start editing videos and showing the comments. Hold on a sec. I'm not an editor. Anyways, made it this far in the video. Lance Mechanics, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, check some other videos. Moving forward. So I taught automotive, loved it. Teaching is a whole other experience, a joy. And when you teach something, you get to know it better. Those kids I taught is probably the most amount of teaching I did in the automotive industry. Because when you're in a dealership, you're not really teaching. There was apprentices, and they're generally left to fend for themselves unless there was some big issues, and they'd call in help around the other guys. But generally, they're kind of expected to know what to do, especially if they went through trade school, and that's a whole other thing, because trade school basically teaches you how to do tests. There's only so much that can help you with hands-on. Unless you're doing it in your backyard every day, it's impossible. And when you put these apprentices in the dealership setting, they got to be paired up with somebody. Having them stand around is one thing. Honestly, have the licensed guy stand around and let the kid do the work, but that's very rare. You don't see that anymore. And if they do, it's usually some slick guy who's got his hands around the service manager, and he's got 2 hoists, and he's having the kid do his gravy work while he does another job and double up on his hours. It's quite common. So, where do we go? Yes, apprentices are abused, they're used, they're thrown away. Anytime they give back a little, or they fight for themselves a little bit, they're usually replaced. I don't know how many times I can beat a dead horse. Like, there's a lot of things that apprentices are just screwed over on in this industry. I gotta focus here. Wages is the big thing. So, I should have started off with this in the beginning of the video. If you made it this far, I hope you're watching still. Apprentices are screwed over the hardest on wages. So, there used to be a formula that they'd make a certain percentage of whatever the tech is making, right? Fair. So, what I know is, in my area, an apprentice electrician is at $24 an hour. An apprentice mechanic is at minimum wage. I think minimum wage is $17 an hour. So, you can do the math right now. That apprentice, if he somehow gets an apprenticeship in electrician, it's hard, is already $7 an hour better off. After 40 hours a week, that's almost $300 a week on a paycheck, $1,200. They're almost 14 grand more a year just to start off. That can help pay off a lot of debt. That can help you get further ahead. Whereas the automotive technician is making minimum wage. You know who makes minimum wage in here? And don't get me wrong, I started off at McDonald's, my first job. The burger flippers. Or they can go somewhere at Costco and make like $22 plus an hour pushing carts. So, and they could go far. Costco seems to hire within. But it's like there's so many better options, and people are really understanding it. I've seen in the comments there that a lot of apprentices went into other jobs and they're making more money and they're happier than ever. Whereas as they were in automotive, they were just absolutely miserable. And the wages reflect it. Dealerships love apprentices, especially ones who are mechanically inclined, because it's cheaper for them to pay a kid minimum wage to do a brake job than it is to pay a fully licensed seasoned technician for the brake job. It's almost 50% more profit margin, if not 100% profit margin on the friggin' job itself, on the labor. So, we're seeing things in the comments where they're hiring mass apprentices, firing the seasoned guys and having the apprentices do the work, but they're not giving the apprentices their hours, or they're promising the world, and like, holy cow, like this industry is just messed up. No regulation. Like, you know, honestly, they even say when they came in, at least in Ontario, it's supposed to be a ratio of 1-to-1. So you go to a shop and you see 3 licensed mechanics. I keep saying licensed, that's an Ontario thing, or North America. And then you'll have like so many apprentices. The ministry should just come in and shut that down. It should be 1-to-1. And then they should be able to ask the question, well, what's that guy doing here? Why isn't he signed up as an apprentice? Well, he said 1-to-1. Why is he in the shop? What's his role? They don't enforce that. They really don't. Nobody enforces anything here, so apprentices will continually get screwed over here in Canada. And you know what? There's tax breaks for the apprentices here too. Canadian Tire is the worst. Even the person filling up the propane when you go to the propane station is a registered apprentice in automotive, even though that guy will never grab a screwdriver or tool in his life. Like I said, Canadian Tire is probably the worst of them all here. I know this is like Canadian content and the Americans won't understand, but just the way the government's funding apprentices and they don't know it, and they're getting tax breaks to corporations. Or other places are doing it too. I couldn't say, name a few. I'll figure it out one day. Oh, this video is ranting on. I'm going to rely in the comments on a lot of people here. It's a tough one. There's just no love for apprentices. You can make a drinking game out of this. They're absolutely treated like dog crap here, and it's not going to get better. And like I said, I have zero sympathy anymore for the automotive industry. I hope, except for the people in it still. So what do? There's absolutely nothing you can do. I'm going to continue preaching that you should go to another industry. Electrician's a popular one, I think. Heavy equipment, it's up there. You're going to do better off. Go build wind turbines. Go be a wind gypsy for a bit. There are so many better trades out there where you will be better off early on and you'll have a better life, especially if you're young. I changed careers at like 30 something, so it's not too late for anybody. When I was in Alberta working on the wind farms, there was a guy who was 68 in a crane apprenticeship. So like, age is a number. If you really focus on it, just try and get out of that rut. So I know there's a lot I'm probably missing. 12 minutes of ranting is pretty good so far. Post in the comments when I'm missing, because there's so much. Like, I used to fight for apprenticeships when I did all these big meetings at the college with the friggin' business owners in my area, and everybody's just out to lunch. It's an uphill battle. Like, you got to be very political with them. And I always said you got to increase wages, and they always said yes, and then excuses always came flying right after. And they were always complaining of skilled labor shortages and that. They want 10 years of experience in 3 months. Like, it's never going to happen. I was still making mistakes late into my career. It's hard. There's just too much going on in a modern car, and it's taking that much longer to create a skilled technician. Some people are naturally born with it, some aren't. You can't base the one genius off everything else. No, you got to average it out and say, okay, this is where we're at. It's taking on average another 2 to 3 years for a person to become a fully skilled technician, because things are just way too complicated. And it's a subject people won't touch on anymore. I'm probably going to do another video on that. Anyways, Lance Mechanics, you made it this far in the rant. Post in the comments what you know. If you're an apprentice, I know there's a lot of them on this channel. Post your frustrations. Helps the general public, and it kind of gives a warning to the next generation of up-and-coming apprentices to just get away from this industry. Go heavy equipment. Anyways, Lance Mechanics, have a good one.